The election of 1800 was life-changing for our government and country. At the time, our new young country was at the point of distress. Spirits were low, and there was a growing distrust in the government and fighting within political parties. For a new country, this was one of the most challenging tests it had to face. Let's start at the beginning. George Washington, our first president, was a war hero, and the people loved him. He inspired patriotism in the people of the United States. He served as president for 8 years, and then he decided that he would step down for the greater good of the country, even though he could have rerun and would have likely won due to his popularity. He added that he was tired and he wanted to go home, so he did. John Adams was vice president to George Washington, who were both Federalists. John Adams was well respected by George Washington. However, many people did not really like John Adams. There was some debate on reasons why for this, but we know he was not considered to be loyal to his party. When George Washington left after his second term, John Adams won the election to become the second president of the United States. Oh, and he was the first president to actually live in the White House. It was during John Adams' term that the distrust of the government grew, as did the increase of fighting both between and within political parties. One of the most controversial moves that John Adams made was passing the series of laws known as the Alien and Sedition Acts. The Alien Acts included powers to deport foreigners and making it more challenging for new immigrants to vote. The Sedition Acts prohibited public opposition to the government. Fines with imprisonment could be used against those who write, print, utter, or publish any false, scandalous, and manipulous writing against the government. Under this law, over 20 Republican newspaper editors were arrested and some were even imprisoned. The American people were not happy and felt that their rights were being taken away by these acts. Seriously, what happened to the amendments? Also, this time, John Adams made an enemy of a person who would end up having a major influence on the outcome of the election of 1800, the former Secretary of Treasury Alexander Hamilton. We have now arrived at our destination, the election of 1800. This was a really ugly election. The main candidates from the Federalist Party were John Adams and someone named C.C. Pinckney. The main candidates for the Democratic-Republican Party were Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr. We've heard a bit about John Adams already, so let's take a closer look at the other candidates. Thomas Jefferson was a Democratic-Republican. During George Washington's presidency, Jefferson was in his cabinet as the Secretary of State, and during John Adams' presidency, Jefferson was the vice president. Interesting fact, he really loved mac and cheese, a dish brought back from France. No one really liked it and thought it was weird, but they didn't want to tell him that, so that was really awkward. Aaron Burr was also a Democratic Republican. He had a wife and daughter who were both named Theodosia. After building up his law practice, he ultimately became the senator of the state of New York. Interesting fact, Aaron Burr was an orphan. Hey, I wonder if you knew any other orphans. Charles Cotesworth Pinckney, or CC for short, was a Federalist from South Carolina who served in the Revolutionary War and was an established lawyer. Alexander Hamilton was a fan of Pinckney. Each political party thought the other would cause the downfall of the United States. Before the votes were cast, there were a lot of rumors being spread about the candidates. For instance, Adams was called senile, vain, and jealous, and had said to turn his back on his party. Pinckney was labeled mediocre and ill-suited for a presidency. Jefferson was called a coward. Burr was said to be without principles and would do anything to get his hands on power. It's important to note, unlike today, where the presidential candidates would pick their vice president to come as a package, back then the top vote-getter became president, and the second highest vote-getter became vice president, even if they were from different parties. The votes are now in. Jefferson and Burr both received 73 votes. Adams received 65 and Pinckney received 64. With the top vote-getters tied, the tie-breaking vote must move to the House of Representatives, where each state had one vote. There were only 16 states back then. A candidate must have at least 9 votes to win it all. The states voted 8-6-2. 2 states, Maryland and Vermont, submitted blank ballots because of the tie vote within their state. Jefferson was a bit short and could not get a secure win. This process went on for another 34 more times, with the same result. Neither candidate could achieve 9 votes. Behind the scenes, Alexander Hamilton, who opposed Burr, worked on getting more votes for Jefferson by saying Jefferson was more trustworthy than Burr. Finally, on February 17, 1801, in the 36th round of voting, South Carolina and Delaware abstained the final vote and came in with 10, 4, and 2. Jefferson won the election and could be the 3rd president of the United States. Despite the drawn-out voting process and all the negativity throughout the campaigns, it was a peaceful and smooth transition from Adams to Jefferson. What was really remarkable about this election was that this was the first time the power in America passed from one party to another. The road to get there was rough after the retiring of a beloved president. The tragedy was that his successor was not liked and threatened the rights of the people of America through various acts. The fragile new nation was becoming discontent with the government and finally put through a very long and rocky election. The triumph is that the new nation did not crumble through these rough times. They stuck to the process they developed by following the Constitution. A nation with less resolve may have broken apart.